Okay, Grandpa is ready for the next portion here. A little adjustment. This is so the Sandman descended into Santa Clausen, raised everybody up, and now everyone there is having the same dream, which is chapter 7, a dream pause. My name is Sanderson Mansnoozle, or Mansnoozle, Mansnoozie, Mansnoozy, not Snoozle, Snoozy, and I have no age. My story is the story of many dreams. Dreams do not exist within the realm of hours or minutes or any measure of the day. They live in the space between the tick and the tock. Before the tolling of the bell, past the dawn, and beyond the velvet night. I am from a place that was a dream, a place called the Golden Age. And though it may be a place of the past that is not gone, a dream of it lives still. My telling it to you will make that so. I was once a star captain in the Golden Age, born to guide the stars that would not stay still. Stars are an amazing phenomenon. All but the rarest stay in place. You see them in the night sky, and you always will, but a few, precious few, are restless, driven on and on by too much energy or curiosity or even anger. These are the ones we call shooting stars. As a star pilot, I belonged to the League of Star Captains, a cheerful brotherhood devoted to the granting of wishes. We each had a wandering star that we commanded. In the tip of our star was our cabin, a bright, compact place, much like an opulent bunk bed. We journeyed wherever we pleased, passing planets at random and listening to the wishes that were made to us as we pass it. You ever wished on a shooting star? I love the imagination that created these stories. We journeyed wherever we pleased, passing planets at random and listening to the wishes that were made to us as we passed. If a wish was worthy, we were honor bound to answer it. We would send a dream to whomever had made the wish. The dream would go to that person as they slept, and within this dream, there would be a story. Shooting star. The story was powerful enough, the person would remember it forever, and it would help guide them in their quest to make the wish come true. These dreams were considered one of the greatest treasures of the Golden Age. But to create the dream in the first place, we had to be asleep. So we were often asleep and dreaming, even as we flew, and our stars would awaken us if trouble lurked. And trouble wasn't difficult to find. Dream pirates prowled every galaxy. They were nasty, stunted creatures who lived by stealing dreams. At first, they ruthlessly plundered these dream treasures of the Golden Age for the bounty they could raise for their return. But then they discovered an even more wicked motive for this crime. If they consumed a dream, people who eat your dreams. It made them stronger, tougher, and more powerful in every evil way. So we star captains fought hundreds of battles with the dream pirates, at least until the great war that ended them. We weren't without help. The other planets and constellations of the Golden Age banded together and formed the greatest fleet in the known universe, led by the most brilliant and fearless captain in history, Cosmotus Pitchiner, Lord High General of the Galaxies. It was Lord Pitch, as he was called by his sailors, who sailed unceasingly to every corner of the heavens and hunted down legion after legion of dream pirates. Though he was victorious and had become the greatest hero of the Golden Age, he paid a most terrible price. And this is where this story of my life takes an unexpected turn. The tragedy of Pitch and what brought him low became the center of my journey. It is the story of Pitch and his lost daughter, of how she became lost, of how Pitch was broken past heel, and of how his daughter became the one you call Mother Nature. They're all dreaming. Chapter 8. The heart becomes the hunted. The war of the dream pirates was victorious and bloody. The pirates knew that if they lost, they would never again be as powerful as they were at that very moment. So they became more clever, devious, and cruel with their tactics. They would destroy whole planets, extinguish stars, eliminate entire constellations. For eons, the pirates had been seen as dangerous criminals. Now, the people of the Golden Age viewed them as an evil that had to be eradicated. Soon, hate became the center of how this war was waged, and hate is a powerful force. It can make bad men worse and good men nearly mad. Lord Pitch had been noble and fair at the start of his campaign. He'd fought honorably against the pirates. When he bested their ships, he took the survivors prisoner. He fed them well and urged them to renounce their wretched ways. But the pirates saw this threat of humanity as a weakness that could be used against Lord Pitch. They thus far failed in their attempts to assassinate him, and their attempts had been many. Now, however, they realized with cold calculation, if they failed to kill him in body, they would simply destroy his spirit. They began to hunt for that which mattered most to the valiant sailor, his family. Lord Pitch kept his wife and child housed safely on the small moon of a planet deep in the heart of the constellation Orion. It was a lovely moon, was well protected by the many asteroids that encircled it. Each asteroid was a small fortress armed with a platoon of the elite of the Golden Age armies. Lord and Lady Pitchiner were doting parents, their palace a thrilling place to raise their young daughter, Emily Jane. She was a wild and joyful child, with raven black hair as thick and flowing as a horse's mane, which was fitting, as she was always on the run. Like her father, she loved to sail. She was constantly in her own small schooner, venturing around her moon and its asteroids. Lady Pitchiner, ever vigilant in her care of their only child, often ordered Emily Jane to stay close, to take a guard with her, or simply stay home. But Emily Jane disobeyed her mother frequently. She couldn't stop herself from slipping out alone and doing as she pleased. Her father loved his girl's wild heart, so he turned a blind eye to her disobedient sailing ways. Fate can be as peculiar as any dream or story, for it was one of these little secret adventures that saved Emily Jane's life. Dream pirates had been reported off the tip of Orion's sword. Lord Pitch hurriedly said his farewells to his wife and daughter before preparing to hunt down the scoundrels. The family never liked saying goodbye. They tried not to think of the dangers that would be faced. But this time, Emily Jane had made for her father a silver locket containing her picture. He was very pleased by it and put it around his neck as he kissed her. "I'll be back soon," he told her. "Promise," she said. "On my soul," he replied. Lord Pitch was a man of his word, and he reassured himself that his family was safe. Their moon home had many defenses against a large attack. But the dream pirates had not planned a large attack. They had something more intimately sinister in mind. Several dozen pirates, shadowy and expert, slipped past every guard, every outpost, every defense, and made their way to Lord Pitch's villa. The villa was spacious, columned, almost castle-like. It was carved from moonstone, so the rooms had a soothing, cool glow of reflected light, even in the darkest night. But this night seemed particularly dark. All in the villa were asleep except one, Emily Jane. After bedtime, she had slipped out her bedroom window and into her schooner docked close by. She hadn't yet traveled far when she spied a school of starfish swimming low in the moon's atmosphere. She loved starfish. Favorite game was to tie her schooner to the leader and ride along with them as they swooped and dove through the canyons near her home. The dream pirates, so intent on infiltrating the villa, had not seen the girls sneaking out. Emily Jane had already cast off when the pirates were surrounding the villa and readying to strike. They could feel the sleeping dreams of Lady Pitchiner and of the entire house. To the dream pirates, dreams were like blood to a vampire. Dreams made them hungry and sometimes stupid. Could they feel the dreams of Lord Pitch's daughter? They were too impatient and crazed to make sure. She must be in there somewhere, they reasoned, and so they charged. A dream pirate attack is swift and ragged. Like awkward phantoms, the pirates often fly in lurches and jerks, and they usually destroy everything that gets in their way. Lady Pitchiner startled awake as the pirates smashed their way through the home, coming closer and closer to where she lay. She could hear the alarm sounding, but would help come in time? She doubted it. She ran into Emily Jane's bedroom and locked the door, but the bed was empty. The covers hadn't even been pulled down. Good, Lady Pitchiner thought. She's out on her ship. For once she was thankful rather than angry that her daughter was so rebellious. The pirates were smashing down the door. Lady Pitchiner had only a moment to act. They'll be looking for us both, she thought, so she grabbed a large doll and held it in her arms as if it were Emily Jane and sat very still. The door splintered into pieces and the pirates poured in. Lady Pitchiner knew the awful fate of those taken by dream pirates. Their souls sucked dry of dreams, leaving them to become mindless slaves or worse. They must be made to think that we have died, she thought desperately as the pirates clambered closer. Keeping just enough of the doll exposed under her cape so the pirates would see it, she ran for the window, straight into it and through it. The glass shattered. Lady Pitchiner was gone. The pirates pressed at the window, staring down. The fall was more than a mile. Emily Jane had heard the alarms and the explosions echoing through the canyons she was coasting. She knew the ruckus could only be coming from her home. She knew the sound of a dream pirate attack. They had attacked her father's ship when she and her mother had first come to this moon. And though she was wild, she was not foolish. She stayed with the starfish. Perhaps if she rode among them, she would not be seen. The starfish swam swiftly through the canyons in near panic from the sounds of battle. Between gaps in the canyon's peaks, Emily Jane watched in horror as her palace was riddled with explosions. She could make out the window of her own room, then the awful sound of shattering glass, and there was the unmistakable figure of her mother falling. Emily Jane turned away. She closed her eyes tightly and would not open them. She let the starfish take her where they would. The starfish darted on and on, away from the embattled moon, through the rings of meteors and out into the ocean of space. Soon Emily Jane could no longer hear anything but the lulling sound of the wind as she was pulled farther and farther from her doomed home and into the eternity of space. Chapter 9. A little girl lost and a Titan found. And so Emily Jane traveled far from her home and far from her sorrow until she came to an unexpectedly safe place, the constellation called Typhon. Before the War of the Dream Pirates, Typhon had been a maker of storms and was a powerful ally of the Golden Age. He could conjure up solar winds so vast and terrible they would scatter whole fleets of dream pirate galleons when required. But the wily dream pirates had managed to ravage him and render him harmless. They had extinguished the stars that had been his eyes. Once blinded, he could no longer see the pirates as they attacked, and they had been merciless, killing so many of his stars that his once vivid outline was nearly gone. He was now a forgotten ghost of his former self, and he had lost the will to make storms or to fight. He was a mournful, pitiful Titan. Only the harmless starfish ever swam among Typhon's few remaining stars and moons. Now, as the starfish weaved their way past Typhon's head, Emily Jane was as blind to the damaged giant as he was to her. Her thoughts were only of her poor mother, her vanished home, and the feeling of being as lost as any child could be. "Father," she cried at last, "come find me, please, please. I am so alone." Typhon heard these cries. He had only heard the taunts and laughter of the dream pirates since his sight was destroyed. He thought he would never again hear a voice that was not forged by cruelty. "Child," he whispered, "how come you here?" Even in a whisper, his voice could fill a galaxy, but his was a strong, unthreatening voice, like a summer storm that has recently passed. "Child, how come you here?" Startled, Emily Jane looked up and saw what remained of the starlit giant. Like all Golden Age children, she had been schooled in the names and shapes of the constellations, so she immediately recognized his dimmed face. Through tears, she told Typhon who she was and all the awfulness of her journey. This stirred Typhon, and for the first time since his blinding, he felt an echo of his former might. They had both been victims of the dream pirates and had been left to lonely fates. He summoned up a breeze that took Emily Jane and her starfish to a moon near the stars of his right ear. The travelers were exhausted and resting was very welcome. As they landed among the powdery craters, Typhon spoke once more. "Child," he said, "you are not alone." These words were like a shield of comfort for Emily Jane. She felt safer and even hopeful, and as she fell into a long, weary sleep, she thought over and over, "Somehow my father will find me." Chapter 10. A Dream Becomes a Nightmare. When word reached Lord Pitch that his home and family were under attack, he knew he had been duped. There were no pirates waiting where he had been told, so he pushed his fleet to return with a speed none thought possible. The palace and most of his moon was now nothing but scorched ruins. The pirates were reboarding their sleek escape vessels when Lord Pitch's warships surrounded them. They never expected him to return so swiftly. Lord Pitch wanted these pirates alive. "My wife and child may be among them," he told his lieutenants. The pirates were impossibly outgunned. They knew it was hopeless to fight, and they also knew they could count on Lord Pitch's compassion. They surrendered without the firing of a single shot. But as they were hauled aboard Lord Pitch's flagship, they did not face the same noble warrior they had come to begrudgingly respect. They faced a man on the brink of madness. "My wife and daughter, where are they?" Lord Pitch demanded. The captain of the dream pirates said with a sneer, "We were denied the pleasure of draining them of their dreams." "Because you were caught?" "No, my lord." "Have you harmed them?" "No, my lord," replied the captain, his lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. "They are dead." Lord Pitch stood stoically. He was a gentleman of the Golden Age, a commander of its armies. Even now he felt he must maintain his judgment and composure. But the pirate captain was too keen to bring forth his hurts. Your lady so feared our company that she threw herself to her doom, and the child with her, the captain gloated. Lord Pitch could barely speak. He looked from one pirate to another. Is this true? The captain grinned. 'Tis true, my lord. I saw it myself, as did we all. Lord Pitch, bringing his face within inches, the captain said with a measured calm, then feast your eyes on mine. They're the last things you will ever see. And with startling suddenness, he drew his sword and cut the captain's head from its body. He stepped quickly to the next pirate, and before another word could be said, he sliced again. Another head tumbled to the deck. The pirates gasped and pulled against their chains, but Lord Pitch continued on. His own crew shuffled and murmured uneasily. Was this their general, the most gallant of the Golden Age? Lord Pitch was methodical and never paused. All the pirates and Lord Pitch's mercy were dead in less than it takes to sing a song. Chapter 11, A Stormy Relationship. Emily Jane's life with Typhon suited her nature. He had been a god of storms, and now he delighted in conjuring up tempests for her to ride. At first she rode her starfish over the waves of solar wind that Typhon blew, but in time he taught her the trick of making storms herself. He anointed her as his daughter, and from then on she could wield the power of the heavens. Wind, starlight, gravity were hers to command. She now was a sister of the heavens and was honor bound to use her power only for good. Emily Jane never tired of summoning playful squalls. She rode them until she was exhausted. It was the only peace she knew from the heartaches that ate away at her. Where was her father? Why did he not come to find her? Typhon was kind, he even loved her. In time, she regarded him with awe, but awe is not affection or love. It didn't heal her pain. She stayed with Typhon because she hoped against hope that if she remained in one place, there was a chance her father could still find her. But while the starfish swam as far as they dared to, tried to send word of Emily Jane, they could never make it far enough. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. Occasionally, passing wrecks of abandoned ships drifted by the constellation. Emily Jane became an expert forager. She discovered that the contents inside these ghostly vessels could supply her with all her needs. She positioned dozens of scavenged telescopes all over her small moon so she could be the eyes of Typhon. Food, supplies, clothes, furniture, books, everything she might need, all were found in the abandoned wrecks that strayed close enough to her moon that she or the starfish could retrieve them. The hull of a crashed galleon served as her home, so she lived in a sort of remarkable magnificence, a ramshackle, remarkable magnificence. There was even treasure, great heaping chests of it, which she stored in the moon's small hollow core. But the more treasure she amassed, the less the treasure came to mean to her. She even began to hate it. It reminded her of the past, of her home, of the Golden Age. In those days, those early weeks and months with Typhon, she scanned the heavens in every direction, each hour on the hour, ever hopeful, looking for her father's flagship. But the years wore on without a single sighting. He has forgotten me, she decided one fateful day. It was the beginning of her 16th birthday. She had tried to forget the date, Year after year, her only wish had been a simple one, that her father would come. But 10 birthdays had passed, and each one left her harder and more bitter. On this day, the ship finally appeared in the distance. Her hope came back. She could tell in an instant that it wasn't a dream pirate vessel. Their ships were always twisted, spiked, and foul to look at. This was a golden age craft, to be sure, elegant of sail and line. It was beautiful, too beautiful. It was no warship, but it did not fly the flag of her father. It was a peaceful liner and nothing more. Why has father never come? She wondered bitterly. She felt an anger that clouded her good sense. She hated her father now. She hated the world that she had so ached to return to. She'd rather stay lost. And in that dreadful moment, something changed in her. Her heart became consumed with rage. Typhon could feel that something was terribly wrong. Daughter, he whispered, what do you see, friend or foe? Her answer surprised even herself. I see only foes. Without warning, she raised up a murderous storm. Typhon knew the sound of pain and rage. He felt that she had lost her reason. Daughter, he cried out, what ship approaches? Not the ship I hoped for, she shouted back. Her violent winds sped toward the helpless vessel. Stop this tempest, Typhon ordered her. We never harm without cause. From now on, my cause is harm, she screamed. Typhon knew then that she had gone mad, and gathering all his strength, he sent forth winds to counter hers. But her rage was equal to Typhon's goodness, and she fought him, hurling a galaxy of hate-filled torrents at the ancient colossus. Daughter, stop, he pleaded, summoning every last ounce of strength he possessed. You are not my father, Emily Jane shrieked. Meteors, comets, hunks of broken planets came smashing into Typhon's stars and shattered the golden age galleon that neared. The old constellation's heart was cleaved by her words. He was stunned and heartsick. Her deeds were a betrayal that could not be forgiven. From forever on, you are cursed, he bellowed, stunned and heartsick. You have broken your vow. It scorched his soul to punish her so harshly, to cast her out of his life, but an oath had been broken. So with one mighty blast of his lungs, he sent Emily Jane's moon flying, shooting away from him. It flew at such a speed that it began to brighten, till a hot white light burned until the moon itself became a shooting star streaking through space like a spear. Emily Jane fled to the moon's hollow core just as the old galleon where she had slept was burned to ash. Her telescopes disintegrated in nanoseconds. Everything on her moon's surface was gone. Because she had fled to the moon's core, she became entombed by the melting chest of treasure for which she cared nothing. Emily Jane was indeed doomed. She would have to live within this new star's center and never leave it until it crashed. If only she had known her father thought her dead. If only she and her father had known the truth. Two hearts that had once been united at the center of the golden age would not have become hardened, embittered, and so very cruel. These wounded hearts would not have brought an end to the age of wonders. Chapter 12, Stars Cross. This dream continued for all in Santov-Clausen, but the guardians were taking particular note. They knew, even in this dream state, that they were learning a great deal about Pitch, which would be useful in fighting him. But they also began to feel the pity Catherine had felt. Pitch had not always been evil. His heart was once as strong and good as theirs. But for Nightlight, this was a feeling that confused him. He thought only in simple terms. He didn't want to feel pity. He wanted only to save Catherine. He could not see how pity would help him. Then Sanderson Man Snoozy appeared and became part of the story he had been telling. The dream had been so intense and dramatic that even in their deep sleep, the villagers and guardians were glad to at last see him. Sandy had a manner both smooth, soothing, and blissful. He smiled, sending a blanket of calm to one and all, and then continued the tale. Dream continues. We in the League of Star Captains quickly became aware of this new star. I was born into a family of star captains. For generations, we had steered stars to every corner of the universe, our primary duty to bestow the wishes made to our stars. But the stars we harnessed needed greater and greater speed, for the dream pirates were especially intent on capturing wishing stars. You see, in all the galaxies, there are few things with more dreams in them than a wishing star. These stars are concentrated dream matter, and their pilots are the key to unlocking those dreams. When someone made a wish that was judged worthy, then a star captain would send back one of those dreams to help that person fulfill their wish. But within each star was stored tens of thousands of undreamed dreams that were made by our brethren since time began. And so when I heard of this wild new shooting star, I pursued it. I didn't know its origins. I didn't know Emily Jane was at its cursed core. But I saw that this star could outpace any dream pirate vessel. If I was to saddle it, I would need to be clever. Many other star captains were also after this star, but it had outrun them all. Shooting stars are generally very solitary. They live for speed and wildness. But I had noticed that this particular star would sometimes slow down for schools of starfish. The starfish seemed to have a kinship with the star, which was most intriguing. My brother star captains tried to sneak up on this slowing star when it neared a school of starfish, but they failed. The star was no fool. It could sense a trap and would blast away, leaving any who chased it choking on its stardust. I don't like to boast, but I was well liked among the creatures of the cosmos. Star horses and starfish have always been my friends. I have a soft spot for them and like to feed them a star spice they find most delicious, much as you humans do with sugar for your horses. So one day I rode near a school of starfish. This is Sandy speaking. Sanderson, Man Snoozy. They were glad to see me and let me swim along. I brought up supplies of that special spice, and soon they had completely surrounded me, each hovering beside me to have a taste, hiding me completely. In time, the wild star came near. I waited till it was gliding right by me, keeping pace with us. Then I charged through the starfish and lassoed the star with my line. The stun of surprise lasted only a second. The star shot away with more speed than any I'd ever seen, but I held on. This is not uncommon in trying to catch a wild star. There is an ancient method for bringing them to heel, and I followed it to the letter. I skied along in its fiery wake for 10,000 leagues, pulling myself closer and closer to its burning apex. But it dove and snaked with such fury, even tried to scrape against a planet or two to knock me off. It seemed enraged, something I'd never witnessed before in a star. It needed to serve my more gentle purposes, if only to calm itself. Otherwise, it would burn out. It was the toughest fight I've ever had with a star. Days are difficult to measure in deep space, but it took me the equal of 14 Earth days to finally tame this wild one, and in the end, it was tame in only one regard. It would let me steer it. Now, a lot is known about shooting stars. Not a lot is known about shooting stars. Mortals, of course, never have a chance to do more than watch and wish when they see one. But something happens when you master a star. You come to understand it. Each has an individual personality that you can sense and feel. All are vivid, but this star had an energy that far exceeded any I'd known. It had a voice. It spoke to me. At first, it would not tell me its name or anything about its past, but in time, it came to trust me. It could tell I meant it no harm. that I wanted to be its friend and ally. And a friend is like a savior to one so angry and lost. But still, the star did not tell me its name. We sailed from one end of the cosmos to the other. I would answer dreams whispered up to us. When the dream pirates would attack us, my star would not pause, as most stars did, but would charge them head on, fearlessly. Together we won every battle. Then for a year we traveled in peace. Not once did we happen upon a single pirate. We were curious about our good fortune. In the vast reaches of space, news is slow to arrive. Then word came that the war with the pirates was over. It was said Lord Pitch had been victorious and all the dream pirates imprisoned. The golden age was safe again. And I thought this would be a cause for great celebration for my star and me. But upon hearing this news, my star broke free of my will. It flew at breakneck speed, trying to crash into any heavenly body in its path. Planets, stars, fields of asteroids. I could barely keep it from destroying us both. Then, when it began to careen directly toward a small green planet, 1,000 wishes rose up from the children of that doomed world. These weren't the common, hopeful wishes sent to a shooting star. These were terror-filled wishes. Please, bright star, don't kill us. I urged my star to stop. Think of the children who fear your coming. You are no better than a dream. And at that moment, my star stopped. If shooting stars ever stop, they quickly become a sun. It takes only a few minutes for this process to become irreversible. In all my eons as a star master, I had never ridden a star that had just stopped. I sat at my controls and wondered what my wild star would do next. Then I heard what sounded like crying in the star's core, and the words, "My name is Emily Jane. Please, I do not want to be feared." Wow. Well, this is a lot for one session, but I want to continue and finish the dream. So let's go on to chapter 13. Who does a star wish upon? Sanderson and Snowy speaking again. I listened to the long, sad tale of Emily Jane. Now I understood her mysteries. She was driven by a child's rage that had never been soothed, never been healed, and now this rage had the power to destroy worlds. She was moments away from becoming a stationary star. If she continued to refuse to move, she would never fly again. Her anger or strength wouldn't ever again threaten any living being. This would be the safest outcome, surely. But what would it do to Emily Jane? To be imprisoned forever in her star with nothing but her anger did not seem fair. Terrible events had twisted her better instincts. But if she could tame her fury, so I offered her a choice. Emily Jane, you can stay here with your rage until you burn yourself out, or fly again. Let me guide you, and together we will do wonders. There was only silence from her. I added hopefully, perhaps we can find your father, and with him, peace. The minutes went by, and still Emily Jane said nothing. There were mere seconds left before she'd become fixed forever in this spot. In that moment, she suddenly flamed brightly and jerked forward just a little. "I will ride," she whispered with a new calm. And before I could communicate how pleased I was, she shot away with a speed that took my breath. From the start, she had been difficult to steer, always pulling against me, so now I feared the worst. But after that initial burst of speed, she followed my lead contentedly. We inquired about the whereabouts of her father from any ship or planet we neared, but in these faraway regions of the galaxies, very little was known. So we worked our way toward the great center of the Golden Age, to the constellation of Zeus. It was a peaceful journey, and when wishes came, Emily Jane listened. She heard every kind of wish there was. Wishes for ponies and pets, wishes for riches, wishes for revenge on enemies, wishes for love. Emily Jane came to understand all the things that people yearn for. In time, she could see the difference between wishes that were worthy of being granted and those that were not. People are often confused, she said to me one night as we screeched through the sky. They want what they don't need or can't use or won't ever make them whole. True. I was proud that she was learning. I think all wishes are the same, really, she continued. Whether they ask for this or that or the other, what they are really asking for is happiness. And what do you wish, I wondered? What would make you happy? She did not answer for a while. The silence of a peaceful night in the deep oceans of space can feel almost holy. The vast darkness is dotted with stars that go on, farther than any light or thought can seem to travel. But they do. That quiet solitude that wrapped around us, Emily Jane answered my question. I wish to be washed clean of my old life, to let go of my tide of sorrows and find my way to a new shore. This was a good and worthy wish. It was a wish I wanted to grant. But fate had other plans. All these pages are all done in dream. They're all done in darkness of outer space. Everything I've been reading. Chapter 14, Hope Becomes a Weapon Most Foul. We were leagues away from any planet and no other wishes could reach us. And I began to think about Emily Jane's wish. To answer her wish would take all my thought and wisdom. I must go into a sleepier trance to fashion an answer dream. It is during this trance that a star captain must let the star steer itself and be on the lookout for any trouble. Our travels had been peaceful for so long that I had no worries, and Emily Jane had always been up to the task of dealing with any attack. But there was a danger neither of us had foreseen. In all the time that Emily Jane had been trapped in her star, she'd been dreaming one dream over and over that her father would rescue her. Lord Pitch had decided that imprisoning the pirates was a worse fate than death, so the dream pirates were confined to a planet-sized prison on the other side of the cosmos. But they could still detect a dream, no matter how far away and faint it might be. They had heard Emily Jane's dream. At first, it had puzzled them. How could this be? The child of Pitch died in a raid years before, they thought. But every night, they heard the dream again and again. And after a time, they realized the dream was indeed coming from Lord Pitch's daughter. So they hatched an awful plan. The dream pilots knew how badly the loss of his family had wounded Lord Pitch. And he was their one and only jailer. He guarded the single door into the prison that held them. It was such a grim and dark place. Made from giant plates of dark matter, it was a place where no being from outside could ever hear or feel any pirate who coiled inside. Only Lord Pitch could hear them faintly. He had volunteered to be their single guard. He felt he had nothing left since the loss of his family. The dream pirates, with the help of the other dark creatures imprisoned with them, listened each night to Emily Jane's faint dream till they knew the sound of her voice and could imitate it. In one awful night, they huddled next to the single door and whispered to Lord Pitch in his daughter's voice the one thing they hoped would set them free. Please, Daddy, please, 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 open the door. Emily Jane, he thought. He pulled the silver locket from his tunic pocket and stared at the photograph inside. He did not stop to wonder how she could possibly be inside the prison. Daddy, I'm trapped in here with these shadows and I'm scared. Please open the door. Help me, Daddy, please. What father could ignore such a plea? Lord Pitch opened the door, his aching heart suddenly hopeful that Emily Jane was somehow alive and near enough to be saved. He opened the door and sealed his doom. The dream pirates poured out and enveloped him. The cold, calculated betrayal was more than any being could withstand. The locket fell from Lord Pitch's neck. With his hope shattered, his heart withered, and he died inside. At first, he resisted valiantly, but there was no fight left in him. Numb and utterly empty, he let the dark creatures take his soul, and they did. They possessed him completely. He became their leader, their king, their warlord. With Pitch as their general, the Golden Age had lost its greatest strength, its greatest ally, and so began the awful second war of the Dream Pirates, and Pitch was proving unstoppable. But now he could hear Emily Jane's dream. He had 10 times the wicked thirst and need for dreams of his pirates, and her dream haunted him and fed his new hunger. All this had happened without our knowing. Emily Jane's newfound hope was like a beacon drawing evil and awfulness towards us. Chapter 15, the most bitter reckoning. The first harpoon that hit us came as a surprise, but by the second and third I was fully awake, and Emily Jane was already charging the Dream pirate galleon that had fired upon us. It was a massive vessel, tarnished, ragged, and beastly to behold. Its decks were swarming with Dream pirates who fired harpoon after harpoon with withering swiftness. But Emily Jane displayed amazing agility in dodging their rusted dagger points and using her blazing tail to burn us free of the first harpoons that hit. She was heading straight for the ship's bow, her star fires flaming with determination. I braced for impact, but the Dream pirates swerved to port at the last instant. We shaved so close to the ship we could see the shadowy faces of the grisly crew who leered and taunted us as we passed. At the ship's helm stood its captain, tall, gaunt, and unmistakable. It was Lord Pitch himself, or at least what he had become. His skin was now a spectral white, his eyes dark and soulless. He was a creature to be feared. For Emily Jane, this was a shock beyond all reckoning. Her father had arrived at last, but now he was a nightmare come to life. Then Pitch shouted out to me, "Ahoy, Dream Master!" I tried to slow Emily Jane so I could better hear Pitch's hail, and though she pulled against me, she yielded to my maneuver. "Why do you send this dream of my dead daughter to plague me?" Pitch shouted again. Before I could send him an answer, Emily Jane implored, her voice trembling with terror. "Please be careful what you say, Captain Sandy. He is so changed. We don't know what to expect." I sent this thought, taking care with my words. "The dream this vessel sends you, it is no plague, it is a dream of hope." "I have no hope," he bellowed. His voice was edged with rage. "This dream you sent is what killed my soul and made me what I am now. Death, I say, to who made me thus." Emily Jane had never backed down from a fight, but she understood the madness of rage. Her rage at this man had driven her to the brink of despair, but she had pulled back. But he had, but he had not seen her since she was a little girl. If she were free from her star, would he recognize her? Would his hate die as hers had? In an instant, her instincts told her a grim truth. "You must run, Captain Sandy," she said. "I can feel it. If he finds me, we both shall die." "Go then," I agreed, "as fast as you ever have." And away we flew. But Pitch's harpoon men were too skilled and quick. Before we could get out of range, a dozen of their weapons slammed into us, their chains linking us to Pitch's galleon. Emily Jane frantically tried to burn them away, but as one disintegrated, three more ensnared us. Our speed no longer mattered, for now we pulled the galleon with us. The pirates winched the chains and inched their malevolent ship closer and closer. I had fought the dream pirates time and again and had never been defeated, but never before had they been led by Pitch. I had never encountered such fury, but Emily Jane swerved and breached with a power that even Pitch's galleon could not contain. With one great last buck, she snapped free of the chains and we tumbled away. We spun and spiraled at speeds beyond endurance. I remember seeing a small green and blue planet just ahead of us. I could barely stay conscious. I knew we would crash. I could hear the wishes of children coming from this planet. So I pulled at my controls. We must crash over water so as not to harm any child. I could no longer feel or sense Emily Jane. As we plummeted toward a vast ocean, I did hear one thing, a single wish above all the others. It was bright and clear. I wish you well, was all it said. And as I fell unconscious, certain that my star and I were doomed, I thought of that wish and nothing else. We skipped across the ocean's surface like a giant stone, then came to a spray of water, and all went black for me. I did not wake for many years, many, many years. When I did, I found that my star was shattered, pulverized into a sandy island. I was awakened by that same voice that had comforted me all those years ago, the voice that had wished me well. It turned out to be Man in the Moon. And so it is. I come to you with the moon's instructions. I will help you save your friend Catherine and fight Pitch. But to do so, I must finally see the girl who lived in my star, Emily Jane, daughter of Lord Pitch, and the one you call Mother Nature. Grandpa will continue later.